We welcome you to the Antonio Trinidad Stadium on the island of Bonaire and the town of Rincon here in the Dutch Caribbean, where it is the fourth edition of the Concacaf Nations League. And today, Montserrat facing El Salvador to kick off this competition that will run from now in early September all the way through next March. Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Schlanger. It is a hot and humid day on this island in the Caribbean, just about 50 miles off the coast of Venezuela. 90 degrees, sunny skies. Here is Group A in League B, which is what we are focusing on here today. Montserrat facing El Salvador in their opening game. And while I mentioned this is the fourth edition of this tournament, it is quite a complex structure as you have 41 different teams that are separated into three different leagues, A, B, and C. This is League B, which features 16 different teams divided into four groups of four, and they will have matches taking place in this group stage during the course of the FIFA match windows here this month in September, next month, and then in November as well before a break for the holidays. And here in Group A, things begin with El Salvador and Montserrat. St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Bonaire will play later on. And these two teams familiar with one another as they played in a World Cup qualifying match just 3 years ago, and it was a 1-1 draw between the two sides, and both involved in World Cup qualifying right now, hoping to, against many of the odds, make it to the United States, Mexico, and Canada for the next World Cup in 2026. El Salvador, La Selecta, a two-time participant in the World Cup. So far this year, a record of 2 wins, 3 losses, and 4 draws for Montserrat, coming off a year in which they finished 500 with 3 wins and 3 losses. And the reverse fixture in this battle between these two nations here in Group A of League B will take place in the final FIFA window on November 17th. Though they meet for the first time here today, they'll meet for the second and final time in just a few months as we get set for the parade of the players and the officials out onto the pitch here at the Antonio Trinidad Stadium. So, the players exchanging handshakes with the officials and their opponents here. The officiating crew from Costa Rica. And the starting 11 for Montserrat, featuring Corin Brooks in goal, coached by Lee Boyer, a 47-year-old in his second year, the native of London, who had one cap with England back in his playing days, where he also played club football with both West Ham and Newcastle. And there are the four officials from Costa Rica, with Ben Pineda, the head referee, the 37-year-old. Still a relatively inexperienced crew altogether, but getting a good rep here in this first Concacaf Nations League game today in this 2024-25 edition. And the captains meeting at midfield for the coin toss. El Salvador in the white, Montserrat in the red here today. This is a relatively new venue in Bonaire. The first official international match that was played here was just in March of last year in 2023, when Bonaire lost to Turks and Caicos to end their Nations League campaign. And the starting lineup now for El Salvador, where David Doniga, the 42-year-old from Spain, is their head coach. He just took the job past January, and has also managed back in his native Spain as well as in Panama and Ecuador over the course of the last couple of seasons. This is a neutral site game, as here in League B, they are hosting games in each group during a particular FIFA window at one location, because it helps to cut down on costs, travel, logistics. And so a different nation will host the matches in the group stage in each of the different FIFA windows in September, October, November. Here in this first one for September, we are underway from Bonaire. First match of the Concacaf Nations League, League B, Group A, Montserrat and El Salvador. And an opportunity for these two teams to be promoted to League A. And that's really what is at stake in League B. When you're in League A, you can play for the trophy, which will be handed out next March. The U.S. is the three-time and defending champion. They've never lost here in Nations League competition since the event itself was created and in its current form. Now, as far as League B and League C below this particular league, there is a promotion relegation system. So teams can be promoted from League B up to League A, and also conversely, they can drop down into League C. For this League B, the group winners will be promoted to League A. The fourth place finishers in the group will be dropped down to League C for next year's competition. So that's the hope, that you win your group here, and then you get promoted to League A and have a chance to play for the trophy and the championship come next year. This El Salvador team, a little more experienced than Montserrat, and they have more legitimate international results, as well as the chops to play throughout CONCACAF against some of the more marquee teams. They've just had that many more matches in order to define their style, their skill. This is a team that likes to play with the ball in possession. They're very aggressive. Montserrat, meanwhile, typically will sit back and they'll play more counter-attacking football. They like to absorb the pressure, and they do have pace, especially on the flanks, that they can utilize to their advantage. But when you have such few games in order to measure yourself so far here over the course of the last several months, you don't always know who's in the best form. As that one is lobbed down close to the end line, it'll be kept in by El Salvador here, and they'll try and restart. Just over 2 minutes in, that one swung in to the 18, headed well wide for the first goal kick of the match. El Salvador with Rafael Tejeda there, number 12 in the white. That is Teresa Benitez. This is a club that does have a few players with some Major League Soccer experience, and a few play in the United Soccer League as well. El Salvador, known as La Selecta, currently at number 81 in the world rankings. They have been as high as 49, but that was almost a decade and a half ago, back in 2012. So far here this year, they are one game under the 500 mark with 2 victories, 3 losses, and 4 draws. Most recently, El Salvador beat Guatemala at the end of July at the home of the LA Galaxy in Carson, California. But that is one of only 2 victories in their last 12 games altogether. And a free kick here for Montserrat, a little pushing and shoving as Kaleem Strawbridge Simone takes the kick. And Montserrat having some difficulty working the ball out of their own end. El Salvador turning the screws and applying pressure high up the pitch here, winning the ball in the final third. They provide the service here and get a shot on frame. This is going to be Larin, who serves it towards that back post, untouched and out for another goal kick. I expect El Salvador to have the lion's share of the possession here today. Montserrat just trying to find some kind of rhythm and a footing in the game. And that one, just poor execution on the little sliced chip. And look at all the white shirts positioned around the 18-yard box. El Salvador very confident in their ability to send numbers high up the field and win the ball in those dangerous areas. Mind leaving some space at the back, and that's what Montserrat will try to capitalize on, some of this open territory at midfield and in the final. But that is also going to rely on them being able to play direct and find their targets and maintain enough position and possession in order to be dangerous. And when you can do that, you force a team like El Salvador, a team that's typically known for taking chances, you force El Salvador to be more honest than what they are right now. Then they'll have to sit back and allow for what Montserrat is able to do on the counter and be more protective and defensive in their posture versus the way they're playing right now, which is a lot of numbers high up the pitch. Not really worried about Montserrat going the other way. This is Corin Brooks, who does not have a club team. Brooks working as a construction worker for Montserrat, and that's not uncommon. A lot of these players have day jobs doing different things, and football is just something that they're able to do when they have the opportunity. You can't really call it a hobby because they do take it seriously, but it's not something that they do full-time by any means. And right now, one-way traffic for El Salvador here. Just about half a dozen minutes into this game, but still no score at the Antonio Trinidad Stadium in Rincon, Bonaire. Bonaire, a very arid island, not too far away from Aruba, southern Caribbean, 50 miles off the coast of Venezuela. And Rincon, one of just 2 towns on the island itself. That one is lobbed in, headed out. Trying to play on the counter, but it finds its way back to Adam Climaco. And El Salvador having no trouble regaining possession of the ball here. And Montserrat trying to apply their own pressure up the pitch and really alleviate some of the heat that they've been feeling back deep in their own end. It's a lot less stressful when you can play defense at this part of the field in your opponent's half versus having to do it right around your own 18-yard box for extended stretches. Going long up the sideline here, but into the stands, which, as you can tell, are not occupied. A sparse crowd on this Thursday afternoon, just past 4 p.m. local time. A hot and humid day as well. Temperature in the low 90s, very windy as well. And not much to stop the wind blowing in off the coast. So it is a typically very windy stadium. The bleachers are pretty low here as that one is played out. And Montserrat giving it right back, but then last touch by El Salvador, throw in on that far side for Montserrat. You see how low the bleachers are, nothing to prevent the wind, not only from coming in off the water, but then right in over the top of those bleachers into the stadium here. You see the trees blowing, so it is a very windy day, and the wind blowing in favor of Montserrat up the field from left to right here in this first half today. This island, part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the Leeward Antilles, the Dutch Caribbean, and Bonaire, the oldest settlement in the Dutch Caribbean. This island with just over 100 miles of shoreline. And now El Salvador will build from the back. Despite the fact that El Salvador does have the advantage and experience and sheer skill over Montserrat here today. This is a team that's had trouble scoring goals. They'll have a chance right here as it's cut in, top of the 6 and blasted in for the first goal, just shy of the 9-minute mark. El Salvador goes ahead through Brian Landeverd, the midfielder who was perfectly positioned just outside the keeper's box. Gets the cutback pass, and he will hammer it home as El Salvador take the 1-0 lead. And just as I was mentioning how they've had trouble scoring goals against some of the more difficult and high-profile opponents, they get their first here today and take the 1-0 advantage over Montserrat. This is an El Salvador team that's been shut out 5 different times already this year, but they are on the board here today. Landeverd, his first goal of 2024. And Montserrat trying to spread the field and create space, but just once again forced into going long over the top, unable to really build out of the back. El Salvador recovering, but Montserrat in search of their first spell of protracted possession here, with just over 10 minutes now in the rear view, and trailing for the first time. Montserrat, a relatively new nation to international football, only played their first game back in May of 1991. This is an island that is just south of Antigua and Barbuda. They're ranked 176 in the world. And it's a team that doesn't get many home games. It's interesting because the island of Montserrat itself is very volcanic, and because of activity with the volcano the last few years, they've been forced to go on the road to play most of their games. That'll be a free kick for El Salvador. In addition to the promotion-relegation aspect of this League B, there's also the possibility through the Nations League of teams qualifying for the Gold Cup preliminary rounds. So that's also on the table. That's a good take by Alexander Larin. So you have teams here in League B trying to get up to League A for next year to play for a title, trying to get in the preliminary rounds for the Gold Cup, which is another prestigious competition in Concacaf. You have this Nations League plus the Cup, which are the two staples, the two signature events for the Concacaf region. coming off the Copa America as well this past summer, and then looking ahead to the next World Cup that will be hosted by the U.S., Canada, and Mexico in 2026. So a lot of soccer, a lot of football here to be played in this part of the world over the next several years. Both of these nations also involved in World Cup qualifying right now. For Montserrat, they're in the second round for the first time ever, even though they have not won a game at this stage of the World Cup qualifying competition. And those games will resume in 2025 for each of these two countries. Now that El Salvador has the lead here, and they are on the score sheet. The question is, how many more can they add? It's a team that has scored more than one goal only once over their last 13 outings, but certainly showing the signs that they could add multiple goals here today, at least judging by the first 14 minutes of this encounter. Cartagena with the sliding cross attempt that found its way into the arms of Brooks. And now there's a turnover at midfield. This is where Montserrat can be especially dangerous. You have Barzy trying to cut in, but El Salvador recovers very efficiently. If they can win the ball at midfield there and use that's their best scenario by which they can look to score. Meanwhile, Larin cutting in from the left side, tries to cross it, and haven't had much success in trying that so far here in the first quarter hour. Now just went left when he probably should have went right there into the path of the chasing defender. El Salvador just all over Montserrat when they try to come out the back like that. But the problem for Montserrat right now is the fact that they're just not getting players in close enough proximity. They're trying to create that space, but there has to be an outlet. There has to be someone that shows for the ball. Otherwise, you're forcing your defenders down deep into their own end with pressure in their face, and then they're forced to just try and play long and through the air. And a player from Montserrat down. Greg Brom plays his club football in Montserrat. As the player getting treatment right now, and look at the sideline there. Lee Boyer, the manager for this Montserrat squad in his second year. Also a manager at Charlton Athletic in Birmingham City back in his native England. He was also a player and has spent his entire life, not only as a player, but as a manager prior to taking the job for Montserrat. Well, for El Salvador, that is David Daninga, the Spanish manager, the year-old who, back in his playing days, came through the youth academy at Real Madrid. Wound up as a manager in places like Greece, Panama, Ecuador, before finally taking the El Salvador job this past January. El Salvador, the only goal, Brian Landaverde. Here in this first half, and 1-0 is the advantage for El Salvador here in Group A, League B, opening day in this fourth edition of the Concacaf Nations League. Games to be played over the 3 different leagues between now and next Tuesday during the FIFA international window. Teams like the United States, the 3-time defending champions, they have a bye all the way through the quarterfinal round, so they won't even play in these next few months. The U.S. with exhibition matches scheduled for this weekend in Kansas City against Canada, and then on Tuesday in Cincinnati versus New Zealand. But for clubs like El Salvador and Montserrat, they have Nations League games here over the next 3 months. Just about 4 minutes or so away from a cooling break for these two teams. And as I mentioned earlier, it is a very hot and humid day, temperature right around 90 degrees. And this is really the hottest part of the day. I mean, this is smack dab where it is the hottest, the most humid. And so they've built in hydration breaks just about midway through each of the 2 halves here today. That's Rafael Tejeda. He'll go backwards to Climaco. Now Cartagena trying to play it through. And so far, El Salvador finding some opportunities by kind of going over the top. Some of these chips with runners getting in behind are creating some dangerous chances. Emerson Sal Mauricio will set up the game's first corner kick here in the 20th minute. Back to Climaco. Well, that's a good ball between several defenders. And it's going to be hammered in, but blocked out for a throw. "20 minutes down. 1-0 is the advantage for El Salvador. I'll throw into a dangerous area inside the box. A lot of red shirts, though, behind the ball here. And as a result, that shot is blocked. Just a careless ball. Montserrat trying to counter here as Benjamin is just swinging across. But Montserrat just can't get things organized quickly enough. El Salvador showing the pace to get back, and they lose the ball. And for a team like Montserrat, that's going to be the key question. Can they counter quickly enough? When they win possession, can they immediately jumpstart that counterattack and ignite the transition? Because they won't have long to do it and execute. And when you play defense for so long, when you're sitting back and you're forced to chase, those rare times where you do get on the ball, sometimes it's just a different vibe, a different feel, and you just don't have the necessary organization and fluidity to get forward as quickly as you need to. They'll get a free kick here. They've now pushed the cooling break back a few minutes. Come up on the midpoint of this first half. Brian Landaverde in the first 10 minutes with the only goal so far to give El Salvador this 1-0 advantage. Landaverde, the goal scorer, will switch fields. Plenty of daylight on that right-hand side. Getting those diagonal runs is very effective for El Salvador, and it's proved problematic for Montserrat. Crossed in and headed just wide. That'll be a corner kick, but boy, there was only one target down at the top of the 6-yard box, and that's good work by Rafael Tejada. Got just enough space to swing it in. The header flicked on. Might have been going wide, but Corinne Brooks couldn't take the chance. So second corner here, first half. They went short the first time. And now Melvin Cartagena, it looks like, with the outswinger coming up. Low line drive. Volleyed away. Montserrat content to sit back in a low block. And up into the hills. Brandon Barzy, a 25-year-old, back defending. Barzy has one of the 2 goals so far that Montserrat has scored in World Cup qualifying during this phase. 25-year-old who works in construction and as an Amazon delivery driver when he's not playing football for his country. Now some space, chipped back post once again by Alexander Larin, but that just hasn't been working the way they had hoped. The 25th minute, should be just over 2 minutes away from the cooling break here. El Salvador once again playing deep in the final third, and Montserrat for end. The way they determine who hosts these group stage matches, it's the 3rd best ranked teams in each group that are hosting these September games in the group stage. The 2nd best teams will be hosting the October matches, and the best ranked teams hosting the decisive November matches here in Leagues B and C. And once again, El Salvador on the move. After Montserrat easily gives it away at midfield, Larin lays it off. Climaco goes backwards with it. Matches here in Group A taking place in Rincon Bonaire. Group B here in League B. Those games in Granada. Puerto Rico playing host for Group C, and Group D is in Antigua and Barbuda. That's for the matches here over the course of the next several days in this September window of the FIFA international calendar. So it should just be coming up on the cooling break here. Chance for Montserrat, though. They have numbers getting forward. A low shot into the corner, and they equalize against the run of play. A tremendous effort by Brandon Barzy, who has his 2nd goal here in 2024, his first out of World Cup qualifying. It's their first shot of any kind here in the game today. And what a shot it was, picking out that low corner off the restart with 3 defenders around him. Perfect placement, pace, and the tying goal here just over the midpoint of the first half. And El Salvador has to be stunned. Wow. And that will take us to the cooling break. What a way to step off for a hydration moment here. Montserrat getting the tying goal with El Salvador. I mean, they had not even worked the ball into the 18-yard box for El Salvador. But now, in their first opportunity, a clinical finish by Barzi, a 25-year-old who has leveled this match at 1 apiece. Cooling break will just last a minute or so. Won't be long. And what a moment for Montserrat to come off the goal into the high break. A chance to really let the momentum gather now, if they can use that as a springboard to even better things here the rest of the way. Look back at the 2 goals scored so far. Landeverd first. And just a moment ago, it was Barzi answering for Montserrat. So, with just about a quarter of an hour left to go here in this first half, we are back on level terms here. 1 apiece. El Salvador, Montserrat. The opening game, Group A in League B, here in this 4th edition of the Concacaf Nations League. 41 national teams squaring off over the next 7 months across 3 different leagues. The tournament starting here in September. It'll also be next month in October, as well as November, and then the finals scheduled for March of 2025. And this 3-league format, with the teams distributed into various leagues according to the results of the preceding edition. So where they're slotted in these leagues and groups right now is all based on what happened in last year's event. And that's where the promotion relegation comes into it, where teams now in Leagues B and C have a chance to gain promotion into the league above them, and teams in all of the leagues can drop down if they perform poorly and get relegated to the league below them. Only the teams in League A can win the trophy. So for B and C, and in this case League B, which we're focused on here today between these 2 nations, it's all about playing for a chance to move up into League A next year. Is the goal, that is the focus. And this is just the first game of group play. And it's turned into a very good first half. Here's Montserrat, a chance to take what would be their first lead of the game, but now you can see they're starting to grow in confidence on the ball, having tied this game against the run of play, and looking for more opportunities here in the final third, getting to the end line, trying to cross it in, and they will get their first corner kick of the game. Barzi, very active down that left-hand side, winning the corner, and it looks like he'll be the man to take it as well. Brandon Barzi, one of 2 players who you'd have to consider to be the most dangerous offensively. The other, Colleen Strawbridge Simone, who was actually born in England but plays club football in the United Arab Emirates. He has the other goal outside of Barzi in World Cup qualifying for Montserrat so far in the process. This is a team that does have some height, pretty good in the air. Volleyed, but blocked. They might get another crack at it, as that one fell nicely. That'll be swung in by Serino. Montserrat really growing into this game here in the second portion of this opening frame. No doubt helped by the confidence of getting that goal to tie things up. Fifth ever meeting between these two nations. Montserrat has never won. They've lost 3 and tied 1. They played 500 as a nation last year with 3 wins and 3 losses. The Emerald Boys, as they are known, because the island of Montserrat resembles the coast of Ireland. Montserrat itself, just south of Antigua and Barbuda. So further east in the Caribbean than their opponents today. And now Salvador on the move. That's a pretty good tackle. And it's going to result in a corner kick. Third of this first half for El Salvador, but first from that far side. That's good discipline there, and a well-timed challenge from Jamaid Mead as he tracked his runner and slid in at just the right time to not commit the foul. But in essence, they still get a set piece here. And it'll either be the goal scorer, Brian Landeverd, and it looks like he will be the man to take it before it's volleyed away. Landeverd plays it on the overlapping run. Larin was facing pressure from 2 defenders, swung in, and Montserrat will chase it out of their own end. Montserrat doesn't have a deep talent pool to choose from. And free kick here, but this is an island in the West Indies, part of the Lesser Antilles, and is a British territory, but the population is only 5,000. It's 10 miles long, 7 miles wide, but there's not a lot of citizens, as that one is drilled over the top. Nico Gordon firing high, and a goal kick for El Salvador. This League B featuring 16 teams divided into 4 groups of 4. Each team will play every team in its group twice for a total of 6 matches per team. And they're all at a different venue. There's no home and away format. Again, it's a logistical and cost consideration that each FIFA window will see each group playing at one location. And the winner of this Group A will be promoted for next year out of League B and into League A. El Salvador, Montserrat, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Bonaire are the 4 teams in this Group A of League B. In swinging corner kick and right to the keeper, Brooks. El Salvador maybe a little stunned by what Montserrat has been able to do in getting back into this match. And now enjoying longer possessions with the ball as that one is headed away. So El Salvador has kind of had to get back on their heels a little bit. That one will be kept in. And that's going to be a free kick for El Salvador. Alex Dyer just kind of fell on the ball and hoping he would get the free kick. But he was trying to sell it to the referee, Pineda. Yeah, so they went against him instead, so it backfired. As Rafael Tejada was prevented from getting in on it. There's a low line drive, bouncing ball played out and over the fencing for a corner kick. '40th minute, and that one comes through to the top of the box, and we'll see, it was deflected, so it'll go out for another corner kick. And a player down for Montserrat here. Rafael Tejada was the man on the shot. Another line drive, headed clear, just to the top of the box though, but again, Tejada fires it high. Boy, some tasty opportunities, some volleys there from right at the top of the 18, but unable to place them on frame. So 5 minutes plus stoppage time remaining here in the first half. And free kick for... They start quickly. El Salvador has had to be more alert here in the last several minutes after conceding the tying goal. Team will have 2 days off after this game today, and then both play again on Sunday in this window. Montserrat taking on St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and El Salvador will be playing Bonaire here, both games on Sunday. And both at this venue in Rincon, Bonaire. Cartagena just plays it backwards, and El Salvador looking for just the right opportunity. Montserrat in no hurry to pressure. All things considered, if Montserrat can get to the locker room at halftime with this scoreline, they'd be very pleased, considering the way the game started and unfolded for the first half, really. As they were pretty much on their heels, playing defensive in their own end and trying to hang on, it seemed like, for long stretches. El Salvador was dominating on the ball, looking dangerous and threatening offensively, getting forward, pressing high up the field, and until Montserrat got that tying goal, and now all of a sudden the confidence is growing. They've established some momentum, some fluidity and rhythm to their game, and they're looking more dangerous. So if they can keep this game going to the dressing room, they'll have to feel like they have every chance going into the second half if the momentum holds. Now Carino Try to play it ahead. Pass was intercepted. That's a good flick down the line. Now Larin in some space. Good layoff. I was looking for the return pass, though. Montserrat back to defend. A good layoff by Larin, and well, it was Mauricio who tried to give it back to him. Maybe that wasn't the best play because he had to twist his body so much to try and deliver that pass. Might have been better off shooting on goal. Rafael Serino. Into the 45th minute. That's a good ball, slotted through at an angle. Can they get some red shirts into the box? From the end line. And deflected for a corner. It looks like we'll have just about 3 minutes of stoppage time here at the end of this first half. And once again, the goal scorer, Brandon Barzy, will be over to provide the service on the quarter. Barzy with a high arcing delivery, a little further than he had hoped, and it winds up as a goal kick. So 3 additional minutes to play here. Now Montserrat committing numbers forward. They're starting to press El Salvador. This is what their opponents did to them early in the match. They win the ball back, but only momentarily. Montserrat going through the gears here. And just an errant pass allows for an El Salvador throw, but things have shifted in terms of the flow of this game. And El Salvador able to keep it in. Numbers down the pitch. And a whistle here. That's going to be a foul against El Salvador. And a free kick coming out. Well, on that far sideline, it looked like Montserrat had thought that the ball had gone out. So that allowed Tejada to continue his run. But just a foul from behind by Landeveld. And allowing Montserrat the free kick here. Slow to get up. Jermaine Meade. Halfway through the stoppage time period. Going 1v1. Past a pair of defenders. Lucas Kimon. Final minute of stoppage time, first half. Serino looking for a lane. Trying to take on 2 defenders. They win the ball back. Now Strawbridge lays it off. Final half minute. Nico Gordon. This game is turned completely around here in the last 15 minutes or so. way it started, the first 22 or 23 minutes, you would not have expected Montserrat this kind of possession. El Salvador to be chasing. It was all white shirts dominating the ball in the first 20 minutes of this match, but now Montserrat has a foothold in this match, and we are tied at the midpoint. El Salvador struck first with Brian Landaverde, but Montserrat answering against the run of play from Brandon Barzy. A goal for each side, and after 45 minutes, we are tied at 1. Montserrat and El Salvador in this opening game of Group A League B in the 4th edition of the Concacaf Nations League from Rincon, Bonaire. Montserrat will certainly be pleased with the way they were able to turn things around. They weathered the early pressure, conceded just once, and now they have to like their going into the second half. The way this game has turned in their favor, big pivot point after they got that tying goal, and now a chance for what would be their first ever victory over El Salvador. On our way to the second half from Rincon Bonaire. Montserrat and El Salvador here in this opening game of the Concacaf Nations League. This is League B and Group A. El Salvador scoring the game's opening goal inside the first 10 minutes through Brian Landaverde, and Montserrat answering in the second portion of the first half with Brandon Barzy getting the equalizer. And we will get a substitution, it looks like, here to start this second half. And for El Salvador, it will be Jaro Henriquez, who plays in the U.S. for the Colorado Switchbacks in the USL. So will come on and begin the second frame for El Salvador. Only substitution as the second 45 minutes is about to commence. Well, can El Salvador recapture the form they had at the beginning of this game, and really for the first half of that opening 45, where they were controlling the tempo, dictating possession, creating chances, looking dangerous? Montserrat was back on their heels, defending deep in their own end, before everything changed when Montserrat got that tying goal. And from there, they had more possession, and they themselves started to take control of this game. They were spending more time on the ball, and El Salvador was forced to defend. So what will transpire here in this second half? Does El Salvador revert to the form they had early on, or does Montserrat continue this momentum and the rhythm that they established towards the end of the first half? Montserrat looking for their first ever win over El Salvador. They've lost 3 times and tied once. And it would be a tremendous start to CONCACAF Nations League play for this Montserrat club, and this nation that has only 5,000 inhabitants. Montserrat right now playing in World Cup qualifying. They're in the second round for the first time ever, so they're kind of at a high point in terms of the football that's been played in that nation. And can they also take that World Cup qualifying experience and some of the success that they've had there, and can they bring that to the Nations League as well? This is the first of 2 games for each team here over the next 3 days in Bonaire in this FIFA September window, as Group A will be playing all their games here in this window in Rincon Bonaire at this Antonio Trinidad Stadium. Coming up on Sunday, both sides will be back in action, as it'll be El Salvador taking on Bonaire and Montserrat facing St. Vincent and the Grenadines. After this group stage is over, the top team will be promoted to League A for next year's edition of the CONCACAF Nations League. And an early free kick coming up for Montserrat as Kaleem Strawbridge was fouled. And number 7 there is the goal scorer, Brandon Barzy, from the first half. Haven't had many free kicks in this game, especially from a position like this where it could be somewhat dangerous. We've had more corner kicks than free kicks. He's going to go low with it. Now chip it in. And it's going to be volleyed in the end, right to the keeper. Tomas Romero of El Salvador really hasn't had a lot of touches in this game. He's given up 1 goal, but outside of that, hasn't had a lot of work. Just one shot on target, and that is the goal from Barzy for Montserrat. Whereas El Salvador had 6 shots in total and 4 on goal in that first half. In the end, it's a 1-1 game. Defender falling down as Montserrat tries to clear. And stumbling along, trying to get back to his feet there as Craig Braham. Two players tangled up, and Braham just trying to stay with the ball a little too long. He's the one whistled for the infraction. Now working down that left-hand side, played across, and not enough white shirts in the vicinity. Montserrat used there to get the tying goal in the first half, then settled into longer protracted spells of possession as the half unfolded. And it looks like we're kind of back to the pattern that we saw earlier this game, with El Salvador seeing more of the ball, trying to set up their plans of play. This is more along the likings of what they tend to do in the architecture of their offense. Possession, working the ball left to right before probing and finding an alley or a lane where they can go vertical. And aggressively trying to win the ball back here. Barzy springs free though. And an opening on the right-hand side. Serino with Barzy in support, and kind of a wasted ball. Didn't really have much help, and a very low percentage play. As Montserrat grew into possession in the latter portion of that first half, El Salvador kind of content to sit back a little bit more, but they've come out in the second half with the purpose of winning the ball back every time they lose it, kind of like the way we saw earlier in the game. That's a good step. But Montserrat can't convert it into a transition opportunity. It'll be chipped in. Now Lorin tries to turn his defender. Strawbridge dishes it off. Dyer goes backwards. Strawbridge taken down, no foul called. And Barzy using that pace. Trying to create daylight for himself, and all that pass just clipped the heel. He had his man, Serino, wide open. Serino again with it, against 2 defenders. And just blasted downfield. Again, very warm conditions, temperature in the upper 80s here right now, hovering around 90, humid as well. We had a cooling break in the first half, breeze blowing, but that's a lot of hot air that's being whipped around here on this island in the southern Caribbean. And a pretty good save from a difficult angle by Corinne Brooks. Top of everyone. Landevert slashing between defenders, Plays the ball into the channel, but that's well read. A kick for Montserrat. Very tight defending, and in the end, it's Tejada who is down in the white jersey for El Salvador. Might have caught a boot in the face. As he was tumbling down, he kind of got tangled up with Craig Braham. Now he's the first player to receive medical attention so far in this second half. Tejada, one of 4 different players for El Salvador who has a goal in World Cup qualifying so far. Right now, El Salvador with 1 win and 1 draw, no losses in their World Cup qualifying campaign. Well, for Montserrat, no wins, 2 losses through 2 games, and neither game until next year in 2025. 2 coaches, both from Europe. David Deniga, the Spaniard, in charge of El Salvador, and Lee Boyer from the UK at the head of the Montserrat program. Pretty even start overall to the second half in terms of possession and chances. Time on the ball has turned into more of a strategic, cagey affair. Both teams sensing they have opportunities and will get more. And that is going to be offsides, which is the first offsides we've had in this game. As Teresa Benitez is the man who was in ahead of the play. Benitez tried to check his run. Didn't agree with the call and was taken down hard as well. But the flag had gone up, so offsides number 1 here in this match this afternoon. Trying to go long, Melvin Cartagena, as that pass intercepted. Now Strawbridge hammered at midfield, and that'll be a free kick for the boys in red. The Emerald Boys, Montserrat. First started playing international football in 1973. First official game, though, of any consequence was 20 years later. And now in League B and Group A in the Nations League for this year. Goal kick for El Salvador. These 2 teams will meet again here in the group stage November the 17th, right before Thanksgiving. even a tie would be an important result for Montserrat, considering the fact that here you have Montserrat at 176 in the world in terms of their ranking, taking on a team in El Salvador, almost half that, number 81 in the higher. Montserrat has never beaten El Salvador in 4 meetings, as there's a collision at the top of the 18. Romero comes away, the keeper for El Salvador, with possession, and it's the goal scorer, Barzi, who was down as a result. El Salvador will play on with Barzi down in the box. And now it looks like he'll probably get some medical attention at the other end. Throw in for El Salvador, but now 2 players squaring up now. I think Barham was not happy with the fact that El Salvador played on with Barzi down back in the box. Now looks like he may be up now. So we'll throw in for El Salvador here in the 60th minute of a 1-1 game. Benitez gets it back. Now swung in, but nobody there. Just like we had in the first half, we will also get a cooling break in the second half. And as it stands right now, we're about 15 minutes away from that. Half an hour left to go in the match. And a throw in for Montserrat. Starting to see some of the shadows creeping over to the field here. Still, though, this is the hottest part of the day. Starting at 4 p.m. local time, so as hot and as muggy as it's going to get. Very difficult conditions here for this opening game of the Concacaf Nations League. That's going to be a foul and a free kick. Cartagena taken down right at midfield. Jermaine Meade is the man who has assessed the infraction. Still have not seen any cards issued here today. Pretty clean game for the most part. A few physical challenges, but nothing that's really crossed the line. That one swung in. A lot of hopeful balls coming in from the wings right now. Neither team really trying to play through the middle and on the ground. Another one served in, and it's headed in! Oh, what a moment for El Salvador to take the lead for the second time in this game. What a header, what a cross, and what a finish here. Comes in from Lorin. And a deflecting header near post past. That was just terrific. Watch him pick his head up. He's undefended, which is a very curious situation as to why no one would pick him up there. And that was a terrific header. And the goal for Emerson Salmarizio here in the 63rd minute to reclaim the lead for El Salvador. We've had 3 very good goals here in this game. I mean, a lot of quality. And surprising moments as well. Kind of when you didn't expect necessarily a goal, there wasn't a lot of build-up to it. Kind of came out of nowhere to an extent, or against the run of play. Just as I was alluding to, some of the balls coming in from the wings and the fact that neither team has kind of been trying to play through the middle and on the ground and building up into scoring chances. One of those crosses pays off and turns into the second lead of the game for El Salvador. So can Montserrat respond for the second time? The difficulty they face now is the fact that El Salvador was kind of caught off guard when they got the tying goal, but given the way that Montserrat is built into this game, they're not going to be surprised a second time. They'll be more on guard and trying to protect this lead, and maybe not as aggressive or ambitious in getting forward. They'll make sure to protect that back line and try to preserve this margin in a way that they didn't when they took the lead early in the game. That's going to go out for a throw-in. El Salvador with a rare occurrence to score multiple goals in one game. They had come into this contest today to start the Concacaf Nations League, having scored more than one goal only once in their last 13 competitions. So they have two here today in their first game of group play here in Group A of League B in the Nations League competition itself. It's going to be cleared away. Well, for all the momentum that Montserrat had established in the way that they had kind of gotten themselves back into this match in the latter portion of that opening half and early here in the second half, they still only have that one shot on goal that represented the tying goal when it occurred. But now it feels like the task and the challenge may be a bit heavier for them. Trying to play that one in behind. And El Salvador looking dangerous with their pace here. That's going to come in harmlessly. Well, this is the opening game in League B. League A is also getting underway, and right now it is Guyana and Suriname in the second half. They're tied at 1. The difference between League A and League B here in the Nations League is that when it comes to League A, they have an opportunity to play for the trophy, to play for the championship. With League B and League C, it's about promotion and relegation. If you win your group in League B, you're promoted to League A for the following year. So that's what these four teams here in this group in League B are trying to do. El Salvador, Montserrat, and also St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Bonaire. League B with 16 teams divided into 4 groups of 4. And during the course of the group stage, each playing each other twice for a total of 6 matches per squad. And El Salvador just continues to pour it on here in this second half. So now for the first time, they lead by 2. The race open has been very active down that right-hand side, and Benitez just using the pace that no one could match. And Montserrat not covering. Just a strange sequence of events. Milan Benjamin got beat at midfield, and then nobody came over. This could be a case of Montserrat tiring in the fatigue on top of the heat, the humidity, and they might just be wearing down at this point because nobody picked up Benitez. A very strange and peculiar sequence, and boy, he just motored in unchallenged and was able to pick out the corner. And now El Salvador, their largest lead, up by 2 here in this second half, coming up on the 70-minute mark. And a substitution. As for Montserrat, it is going to be Lenny Serino coming in, the brother of Rafael, who's one of the starters. And he's actually going to come in for Rafael, it looks like. And another substitution is going to feature Ashley Botswan. And he will replace Kaleem Strawbridge, which is interesting because Strawbridge is one of their primary offensive threats. So taking off a goal scorer in Strawbridge when you need 2 to tie. Very interesting. And you never know, though. Could be physical. Something where he can't continue. And for El Salvador here, you got Brian Landeverd also hobbling off. He's going to come out for El Salvador, and he's going to be replaced by Melvin Cruz. So the player who scored the first goal for El Salvador to open the game in the first half now comes off. And Cruz is going to come on. And Kevin Santamaria is also going to come on as well. So first substitutions of the match for El Salvador. Coming here with just about 20 minutes plus stoppage time left to go. So the goals by Landeverd, Mauricio, and Benitez, and all of a sudden El Salvador goes from kind of being back on their heels and in a disadvantaged position to leading by the biggest margin they've had. What a turn of events here. And really, the pendulum has swung back and forth on multiple occasions here for each team. But here in the second half especially, pretty even in the opening 10 minutes or so of the second half. And boy, Montserrat looking so good after they got that tying goal in the first half, but a sequence of 2 goals in a short span for El Salvador all of a sudden has opened this game up and completely changed the complexion of it. Now, you got to wonder about the wherewithal, the legs, and just the physical ability of Montserrat to try and compete and get back in it once again. When you're playing on a hot and humid day like this, sometimes things go against you quickly the way they have in the second frame for El Salvador facing Montserrat here, and the motivation quickly dissipates. And Montserrat trying to avoid that here. But Montserrat had every reason to be hopeful earlier on, but things have really gone against him now, and that's the first yellow card of the match. And against Alex Dyer of Montserrat. Indeed, Dyer just backing in to Kevin Santamaria, who had just come on as a second half sub here. And that's going to afford El Salvador a free kick, and really their first free kick from a relatively dangerous position on the pitch. Haven't had many of these for either side. And you got 3 players standing over it now for El Salvador. Curled in and headed wide. now this is the hydration break. The one for the second half. We also had one in the first 45 minutes. So with the temperature around 90 degrees, the humidity on top of it, a hydration break of just about a minute here. Doesn't last long. And for Montserrat, they may also need to use this as an opportunity to regroup because they are now reeling here in this match. Now, this was the goal once again that made it 3-1, with Benitez scrambling in and just blasting it to the short side. This was the go-ahead goal that made it 2-1. So 2 goals here in the second half so far for El Salvador, and a 2-goal lead here. With about a quarter of an hour plus stoppage time left to go, 3-1 is the score, with El Salvador looking to top the group here after the first game in Group A of League B. Quick cooling break and now set to resume. Expect the teams will use the full complement of subs here today as well, given the weather. El Salvador threatening once again, this time keeping it on the ground. Swarming the 18 though, doing a good job of passing, moving, and there's a shot just over the top of the keeper, Brooks. No one could get ahead on it, but Montserrat really scrambling now. Defensively all out of shape, disorganized, just chasing. The ball pinballs off a couple of different heads. And El Salvador just looking like the fresher team right now as that one is played over the top. Creating some quality chances here, and Montserrat just trying to hang on. Another substitution, this time for El Salvador, and it will be Leonardo Menyar and Blanco both coming on. So for El Salvador, Melvin Cartagena, who's provided some good service today, he will come off, as well as Alexander Larin, who's been very active in terms of trying to create opportunities, provide service, and get the ball into the box.
Your attention, please, ladies and gentlemen. Substitution for El Salvador. Leaving the game number 23, entering the game number.
Now the Montserrat players appealing for time wasting there. That ball was just blasted out and over the top, but that's going to be a foul against Montserrat.
Enters the game number 19, Nelson Blanco, at 75.
Another substitution, this time for Montserrat, and Dominic Richmond is going to be the player to come on. And he replaces Jamaid Mead. Now, just as I was, the fact that all of the substitutes will probably be used on a hot and humid day, it's a sequence of replacements coming on. Fast and furious here. Going over the top. Playing those long balls and earning a corner kick. This is the first corner of the second half. And it looks like Ashley Boatswain will be the player headed over to take it. Boatswain, who plays for Ipswich Town. Line drive towards the back post. That's a pretty good ball. Hit with pace there, headed on. There's no one there in a white shirt. Now dribbling in his own box, very dangerous, but Montserrat able to escape and get the free kick as a result. 10 minutes plus stoppage time left to go from the Antonio Trinidad Stadium in Rincon, Bonaire. First game, Group A and League B of the Concacaf Nations League. Both of these teams will be back at it this coming Sunday at this very venue, with Montserrat facing St. Vincent and the Grenadine. And it'll be Bonaire also playing as well against El Salvador. And a second card of this game being issued here. It looks like to the goal scorer, Brandon Barzy. And a free kick coming up for El Salvador, and a lot of the fouls now of the frustration variety for Montserrat. Falling behind by 2 and realizing that they are really up against it now. So a free kick from a similar spot as to where the last one occurred. Taking aim at the post. Trying to curl it into the path of an on-running player.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a card used to player number 7, Brandon Barzy from Montserrat.
Now Benitez, who has the third goal, spins here before dropping it off, finding Santa Maria. And El Salvador just content to knock it around a bit, work on that clock. Now over the top. That's a good delivery against 2 defenders in front. Brooks dives, and it's going to be a penalty. A penalty shot coming up for El Salvador, as it was Corinne Brooks, the keeper, who dove out and committed the foul as he took down Maurizio. Just a lovely ball here, floated in over the top by Santa Maria, and then right to Maurizio, who's taken down by the keeper. Maurizio, who scored the second goal for El Salvador in this game, the first of the second half, to give them the lead, and right now it stands to be the game-winning goal. And we'll see if he's the man to take the spot to try to make it a 3-goal advantage. Instead, it will be the man who delivered the initial ball, Kevin Santa Maria. He'll take the penalty here to try and make it 4-1. El Salvador goes up by 3 here in Bonaire. Four goals from 4 different players. and 3 of those coming here in the second half. And all of a sudden, what was a tight game and in some ways was favoring Montserrat, all of a sudden has turned completely around, and it's all El Salvador now. Largest margin of the day as we wind down the final few minutes of regulation. It does not look like Montserrat is going to get that elusive first win over El Salvador. And the way things are going, it appears as though they will lose for the 4th time in 5 meetings. This is the first of several consecutive days of competition here in the Nations League over the course of this September FIFA window, starting on this Thursday, going all the way through next Tuesday with matches every day among the 3 leagues, A, B, and C. These 2 teams play again on Sunday, with each team playing 2 games over this window in September. Remember, what's at stake here for the group winner when the group stage is all said and done in November? It's the chance to get promoted to League A for the next edition, which would afford the opportunity to play for the title in the Nations League. Now Montserrat still looking lively here, trying to find their way back into it. Floated in and easily snagged by Tomas Romero in goal. Romero, who plays with NYCFC in Major League Soccer. The only player currently on the pitch affiliated with a Major League Soccer squad. Now Montserrat, an opportunity perhaps in transition here. Worked ahead by Dyer. Trying to get as many numbers forward as they can. It's a good overlapping run. It'll be crossed in and then bounced up and over the bar for a goal kick. Now, this is the 4th edition of this competition, and only one team has ever won it. The U.S. has won the first 3. As a result, they have a pass all the way to the quarterfinal round, so they won't have to play for several months as they look to make it 4 straight here in this Concacaf Nations League. 41 national teams all together. Things kicking off today, but games going all the way through the next 7 months as El Salvador creates another opportunity here. That one's going to be blocked. It looks like it was either a foul or offside. And it's going to be a foul against Emerson Sol Maurizio. After the group stage here in September, and then next month in October, the first and second place finishers of each group in League A will advance to the quarterfinal round, where they join the top 4 ranked League A teams. So those are the squads that will play for the title. And then it's a matter of the promotion relegation sequence for Leagues B and C. And again, a reminder that for this League B, which El Salvador and Montserrat are a part of, the group winners will be promoted to League A, and the 4th place finishers get relegated to League C for the next edition. So El Salvador, seemingly a terrific start here as they look to advance to League A by winning this Group A. It looks like they're going to win this opening game of Group A here in League B as we are into the 90th minute, and then whatever stoppage time is left, but they have a 3-goal lead here as they look to close it out, and it looks like we'll get just about 2 minutes of stoppage time here tagged on at the end. Well, what a show of force in the second half. After it was tied at 1 after the first 45 minutes, El Salvador has come out with 3 unanswered goals here in the second half to take this 3-goal advantage. And 3 very good goals at that. We haven't had any cheap scoring among any of the 5 goals we've seen in this match. And for El Salvador, what a positive sign going forward, because as I noted earlier, this is a team that has not scored a lot of goals in any one game over the course of the last year or so. Coming in this afternoon, they had only scored more than 1 goal on 1 occasion in the last 13 games that they had played. And now here they are with 4 in their first game of this Nations League competition here this year. Montserrat looking for some consolation here as we get into the stoppage time. And not a lot of time to work with for them. Their only goal coming back in the first half, courtesy of Brandon Barzy, that at the time tied this game. But in the second half here, it's been all one-way traffic. So the teams now will get 2 days off, and then they return to play here at this stadium in Bonaire coming up on Sunday. El Salvador facing Bonaire, the home side, in their second group stage match, while Montserrat goes up against St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And now into the final minute of stoppage time. A hot and humid and frustrating afternoon for Montserrat. These 2 teams will play each other once more here in the group stage. That'll be coming up in mid-November. Free kick that should just about take us to the end of this match. Final seconds from Rincon Bonaire. And it is over. A terrific start to the Concacaf Nations League for El Salvador, ignited by a sensational second half, 3 unanswered goals, and 4 goals from 4 different players altogether, as El Salvador opens up Group A competition in League B with a 4-1 win over Montserrat here in this opening game of the 4th edition of the Concacaf Nations League. They survive a hot and humid day in Bonaire. Montserrat with their only goal coming from Brandon Barzy. And so El Salvador, for the moment, will sit atop Group A here. And if you finish first in the group, you get promoted to League A for next year. So that is the goal. There's also the possibility of qualifying for the preliminary rounds of the Gold Cup as well. So far, and so good for El Salvador here. Kind of lost the plot a little at the end of the first half. Montserrat grew into the game, started taking over possession, but El Salvador came out in the second half, and it was a comprehensive and very thorough start-to-finish performance in the second 45 minutes. 3 goals and very fine efforts at that. And they get the victory. Take you back through the highlights of this game now. All unfolded here in Bonaire today. First game in League B, and it was all El Salvador early. This was the first goal of the game, coming from Langeverd. An authoritative pounding of the ball into the upper portion of the net as he roofs it to give El Salvador the first lead. But they kept the pressure on. They had several other good opportunities in that first half before Montserrat got the tying goal against the run of play through Brandon Barzy, the 25-year-old, with a fine finish, and it made it 1-1 at that point. And this is what really jump-started Montserrat's performance in the second portion of that first half. A few more opportunities for El Salvador before the first half was over, but they couldn't convert. And then in the second half of play, it would be El Salvador all of a sudden taking control. Physically, things got a little more aggressive. Saw our first 2 yellow cards in the second half, but then this was a terrific goal to give El Salvador the lead. Sol Mauricio, the go-ahead goal that turned out to be the game-winning goal on the header. That opened up the scoring in the second half, and then later on, Teriso Benitez here to make it a 2-goal lead. Just beating everyone for pace here, nobody picking him up as he cut down on the angle. At that point, the game was pretty much not in doubt. They sealed the deal at that stage, and then yellow card late. Things got more physical. One of 2 yellow cards issued to Montserrat in the second half. And then the final goal, courtesy of a penalty kick that would be awarded because of this foul committed by the keeper, Corinne Brooks. He would take down Maurizio, and then it would be Kevin Santamaria, who had come on as a second half sub. He converts to give him a 3-goal lead. And that would be all the scoring they would need on the day. So 4 goals from 4 different players and a complete dominance in the second half for El Salvador. They wind up with 13 shots altogether on the game, 6 on frame. For Montserrat, just the 1 shot on target. That was their goal back in the first half. Possession turned out to be split 50-50, but make no mistake, this was all one way in the second 45, and El Salvador gets the victory as the final score from Bonaire is El Salvador 4, Montserrat 1. One match sits atop Group A here in League B in the Concacaf Nations League. So that should just about close things out for us as we say so long from Bonaire here on day 1 of the Concacaf Nations League.